everybody. My name is Minkyung Kim. Thanks for having me at today's event. So I'm from USP. So what USP does is that we want to ensure quality medicine. So what that means is that wherever you're located, we want you to consume high quality medicine, and we advocate to do that. So we are legally recognized in more than 140 countries, and annually we ship our reference standard to more than 29,000 locations. And then we work with a lot of external stakeholders, just like how we are doing right now. We want to collaborate with you. So USP employees do not publish, we do not write our standards. Our external stakeholders, just like you, will write USP and advocate for the important topics and decide what should be published as a public standards. And as you can see from the slide here, we collaborate with a lot of worldwide organizations that are listed here. So WHO, ICH, APAC, and not only those international organizations, we also work with a lot of collaborators internationally. So what we are trying to do is that we understand that understanding the gap of supply chain is critical. And if there is a gap, that can have a high impact on a patient's health as a risk. So we need to build a more resilient medicine supply chain to safeguard against these threats. So there are 4 leading factors, and these factors are similar to what our colleague from Tyler University presented. So I'm going to skip the chapter, skip the slide, but rather I'm going to focus more on what can impact biologics supply chain. So let's take a look at the first factor, which is the regulatory compliance. So as you know, international biopharmaceutical company will want to market their medicine product worldwide, not just focused in local market. But if you take a look at regulatory laws and regulations, let's say there is a biologics that's been on the market, there are some regulatory bodies that has a track for the fast track, or orphan drug designation, or rare drug designation. Let's take an example of larotrectinib, which has gained a designation for orphan drug. But if you take a look at the worldwide landscape, some of the regulatory bodies don't even offer fast track. If that's the case, how are you going to deal with this? How are you going to deliver this drug to the market faster? And the next question is cold chain. As you know, the biologics are coming from the living cell. So how you store the cell, how you ship the cell, how you sell this product will be important. And then, as I mentioned, because this biologics drug will be marketed globally, it's important for you to understand what are the policies for the trades based on the global market and then local market. And then a lot of speakers mentions the importance of raw material because there are only limited amount of raw material suppliers worldwide, and then it is questionable how these suppliers are actually storing the raw materials, or what are the donor criteria, what are the differences amongst local and regional regulators look at in terms of what are the virus testing you look at to say this raw material is highly qualified, and what is the definition of low qualified raw materials. And then lastly, it's important to know the supply chain viability and data management. Because these biologics will be marketed globally, you can have segmented data sets from different regions. So the question is, how are you going to qualify these data sets, and how are you going to collect and manage these data sets? So you can see the graph down here. I guess my pointer cannot reach the screen, but you can see the graph going up and down based on what are the global tensions that we experience, such as COVID-19, some of the wars from Ukraine, and the Red Sea crisis. Based on those fluctuations, those can impact biological supply chain. And the graph on the right side, you can see some of the up and downs, some deeper portion of the graphs, and you can only imagine those up and down those happen just within 1 year of time frame. So the question is, then how can you resolve these issues? So some of the papers says that you can resolve these issues, which is possible. You can do that by having real-time technologies. So some of the challenges here, the cold chain innovation, the factors related to digital transformation, and the data and visibility improvements, those can be resolved by having real-time temperature monitors or real-time data sharings or real-time data tracking. And what can be done for the regulatory compliance system? USP has a harmonization system, which is called PDG, Pharmacopoeia Discussion Group, and USP is part of that, as well as Japanese Pharmacopoeia, European Pharmacopoeia, and then Indian Pharmacopoeia. So we harmonize standards so that we can help regulators expedite the review process, also help industries to expedite the drug production system. And then the question is, what do we do with the suppliers network? So if you see the figure 7, what this is telling you is that what international pharmaceutical companies are doing these days is that they have a main hub, such as US hub and Germany hub, and they have a satellite offices, which is called spoke, in different locations worldwide. So the key here, on the left side, you're going to see the table. What this is telling you is that based on different factors, raw materials, manufacturing, up until IT system, you can only do that when you collaborate with your external stakeholders, and that's not just limited to industry stakeholders, it also includes government body as listed here. So I took the same example, same factors here, and then I put what are the USP solution based on those factors. So the first one is cold chain innovation. So within USP chapter 1079, we covers different logistics, which can cover how you handle medications, how you distribute medication, and how you can control the temperature-sensitive medications. And second bullet point, regulatory compliance. I just mentioned about PDG. You can look for more information within our website. You can look for what are the harmonized chapters and references. And then third bullet point, supplier qualification and raw materials. So a lot of industry don't really think about they need to qualify suppliers. They just tend to believe what's on the paper that's offered by drug suppliers. But what you need to do is that you need to have a power to be able to qualify the drug suppliers so that you can make sure that you have a high quality raw materials. And then USP guideline 1043 offers that. So based on that chapter, you can tier different raw materials based on how you achieve those. And then based on those tiering system, you can manage risks. And for the USP supply chain optimization, you can refer to USP chapter 1092 and 1211. And last but not least, at today's lecture, I'm going to cover more about USP drug quality, and that's going to come later on my slides. Last but not least, on this slide, I'm going to mention about medicine supply map. So this is a machine learning web page that USP offer. If you register, you can access the demo. And then the next page, I'm going to tell you what this platform does. So this is an example of USP supply map. Here, I screenshot top 10 drugs. Actually, if you use a platform, you can look for 10 to 20, but for the sake of the slide, I just captured 1 to 10. And then you can see which drug, which out of this oncology medicine, which drug will be vulnerable in the market in terms of the supply chain. So as you can see, a lot of oncology medication, such as doxorubicin, 5-FU, and then paclitaxel, commonly used conventional drug medications, it is likely that they're going to be out of market. They're going to experience shortages. And here, I screen captured a case study, which is what USP done a few years ago. In early 20s, there was a report from Carter and Hanneman saying that when they achieved insulins from local pharmacy in the US, it seems like the insulins from local pharmacy didn't meet the expected limit. So the expected limit range for the insulin is 100 units per ml, but it came out from the study that it was 65 units per ml. So at the time, that was a big news in the US because diabetic community, healthcare professional, pharmaceutical companies, and the patients were alarmed that they're not receiving enough amounts of insulin, which is critical. So USP went back and we did a study. So what we did is that we collected 9 insulin formulation from 3 major manufacturers. So we collected total of around 180 samples, and we analyzed those insulin using USP method, USP validated method. So it turns out that what Carter used was a non-USP validated method, but what we found out that when we used USP validated method, it turns out that the amount that were in insulin product was just about right. So it highlights that it's important to use validated method, which are pharmacopoeia standards coming from USP. And then after that, we concluded that we can do further investigation, looking at different factors such as humidity, and then we can also compare some of the mail order insulins or local-based insulins, so that we can ensure that we can demonstrate the stability of the insulin throughout the US pharmacy. So what USP has is that we not only has documentary and reference standard that can cover the entire supply chain, we also offer what is the best way to nomenclature, what is the best way to label, what's the best way to distribute your medications to patients. And then I'm pretty sure that all of you are aware of the APEX Supply Toolkit. We also collaborate on that. So here I just want to, because I highlighted that quality is a big issue for USP, I want to give you a brief overview of what are the USP biologics offerings for USP biologics offerings within USP. So we have different types of standards. The first one is drug-specific monograph. Everybody knows about it. And the second one is general chapter. For general chapter, we have 2 different sections. One is chapter number below 1,000, and then chapter number above 1,000. So chapter number below 1,000 covers validated method. So that makes regulators' life easier because the industry can only verify their methods. They don't have to develop their own protocols. And then we also have physical reference standard that you can use, also ARM. So on this slide, I just want to briefly introduce you about ARM because everybody knows about compendial standards, which are monographs and general chapters, but not many people are aware of ARM, the analytical reference material, because we just launched this material less than a year ago. This is a new approach that USP is taking. Because it takes 1.5 to 2 years or more to develop compendial standards, we took different approaches, and then we launched materials called ARM. Those are mainly used to test product impurities, and then industry can use that in early on stages. So today's slide, I'm just gonna focus more on the biologics and what are the offerings that we have. So within biologics, we have a biologics product called the legacy biologics. So that means we have a monograph because these are the products that's been on the market for decades, which includes heparin, insulins, and antibiotics. And then I just mentioned antibiotics. I just want to highlight on this slide that what makes USP special. And that's because of the collaborative lab study. I highlighted that in orange. So what that means is that USP qualified different labs globally. USP has a quality system to do that. And when the lab passes those programs, they are entitled to become USP collaborative lab. And then when we're launching a new lot, we're going to launch new lot for endotoxin this year. And then what we have done is that we tested our reference standard at 14 labs from 8 countries. And that's the power of USP. Because our reference standard is already tested globally, so those biologics company who wants to market their drug product globally, they can use USP and ensure quality of their medicines. So for peptides is one of the legacy biologics. That means we have monographs. So we not only monographs, we also have general chapters, and those are informational chapters and procedural chapters that are below 1,000. And then we also offer different offerings, which is called API, impurity, raw materials, and more. And these are the list of peptides monographs that we have. So I just mentioned you about some of the offerings for peptides. So now what we are doing is that for octreotide or glucagon or exenatide, we have more than 10 offerings per drug product because we have reference standards that are attached to glucagon DS, glucagon DP, excipients, impurities, which includes ARM. So you can actually use vast majority of those offerings to test one single drug product. And then these are the snapshot of what are the other biologics that we offer. So these are, we call it emerging technologies. For these, we don't offer product-specific monograph. Rather, we offer cross-cutting standards. So what that means is that we don't limit the type of the drug product. Rather, we offer platform-based standard technology. So for example, if your drug manufacturing if your company is developing IgG-based monoclonal antibody, then you can use all of our offerings for your drug product. So here is the example. So we offer USP map 00123, and based on the characteristic, you can pick whatever suits best with your product. And then some of the listed you see on the right side, we also offer different arms and reference standard in order to characterize your drug biologics or impurities or glucagon, some of the critical quality attributes based on your needs. And if you go to the USP website, you can also look more information. And same principle applies to vaccine. So on the slide, what I want to highlight is that if you look at the list of reference standards / materials, we not only covers reference material for starting and raw materials, we also have reference standard for the CQA, the critical quality attributes. We also have reference material for impurities, and then we also have some of the offerings to cover formulations. And what we did differently for the vaccine pandemic era is that USP wants to get out from the conventional pharmacopoeia. So we started to develop toolkits. What that means is that rather than going through all the different time frame that requires to develop compendial standards, we develop PDF version of toolkit so that industry can use those toolkit quickly so that they can in one snapshot, they can see what are the validity procedural and what are the reference standard they can use to utilize mRNA and viral vaccine quickly. And we are in the process of making revisions annually for these platforms. And same principle applies for cell and gene therapy because this is a highly hot topic globally. We are also in the process of developing some platform-based standard, which is relevant to AAV, CAR-T, and mRNA-based therapies. And last but not least, I just want to give a shout for an opportunity for collaboration. As I said, USP collaborate with you, with stakeholders worldwide. And then USP run every 5 years. As I previously mentioned, USP is not written by USP employee, it's written by you, the global stakeholders. So if you're interested in applying and becoming part of our expert committee members, you can scan the QR code here and then apply. So what our expert committee members do is that you have a power to select a new topic, and then you can review the chapters so you know sooner than later that what can be end up as a pharmacopoeia. and then you have a power to approve what's going to end up in these standards. So these are just an example of USP expert panel. Expert panel is another wording for those who write USP, but we collect expert panel once in a while rather than every 5-year cycle so that we can recruit some of the special experts whenever we need standard development in the special topics. So here are some of the names I just listed here so that you can glance what are the innovative pharmaceutical companies and what are the different locations participants are coming from. So we not only have participants from US, we also have participants from Europe, Asia Pacific, and then government body. And then if you have any other further questions about USP Biologics, please reach out to me. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, the floor is open for everybody. Any questions? Yes, right here.
네, 재미있는 강의 잘 들었습니다. 영어로 말해야 되나? 네, 그 USP에서 레퍼런스 스탠다드 머티리얼을 공급해 줄 수 있다는 것들이 굉장히 긍정적이고 좋은, 쉽게 저희 제약사들이 개발할 수 있게 하시는 것들은 알겠는데, 이렇게 하기 위해서는 각 그 머티리얼에 대한 IP 침해 여부에 대해서 다 조사가 되고 안정적으로 잘 공급받을 수 있는 건지에 대한 것들을 확인하고 싶습니다.
Dr. Kim, will it be possible if you can answer that in English for the virtual participants, please?
Sure. So that is another why we are taking another approach of launching ARM, because those are not like US approved drug, but we applied same USP technology. So we ensure the quality of those ARMs as same as what we do for the reference standard. So that's different approach that we are taking. So because we want to provide materials to the market sooner. At the same time, we don't want to interfere with the intellectual properties from the innovative companies.